Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Gavin Courtney.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
It's a beautiful Tuesday morning up here in the city. As we were saying right before the closing, a little bit cooler than yesterday's.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't feel as steamy.
Yeah, for sure. And yesterday was a hot one. But in spite of the heat yesterday, we did see something very interesting.
Yeah.
And that was, of course,
a different type of heat.
Of course,
down.
right?
Yeah.
Of course, if you might have guessed what we're talking about already, we're talking about day one of the protests which were held yesterday, in large part by members of the BNTU against the government for good governance and in response to the proposed salary cut that the government is, should I even say proposing?
Well, yeah. I mean, I asked the minister yesterday, and he was very clear in saying that the salary cuts are necessary. He said he does hope that they will be able to go back to the table and be in agreement before going the route of having to use the Constitution.
Yes.
So it is very interesting. You know, we keep on chasing the story to get more information as to where it's going to go. Yesterday, when the teachers initiated their strike action, that was just day one. It is to continue from this point forward. We don't have all the details as to what that will look like. Yesterday, they went through the streets, at least here in Belize City, and we know that the other branches have organized their own activities as well. So, you know, if we go back, and of course, the last one on record that we do discuss all the time for prolonged strike action is 2016, when they went for a historic 11 days. And what is interesting about that is that back in that time, good governance issues were primarily on the table, and a salary adjustment as well. And here we are again in 2021 facing the same.
Yeah, exactly. So we did, of course, cover yesterday's events on our newscast from last night. And so we've got a clip just to refresh some of your memories, or if you guys didn't watch it, so you can get a rundown of all that happened yesterday. So we'll take you to our clip from last night.
To stand shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with the Belize National Teachers Union today meant walking for approximately 2 hours at high noon. BNTU's Belize District Branch took to the streets of Belize City in a protest march that started at the entrance of the Marion Jones Sporting Complex and ended in the Yarborough community.
Today is our first day of strike. This morning our teachers went to school, did their work as they would normally do, and then they walked off at 11:30. So this signifies the beginning of a start to however long it will take us to get what it is that we want.
Our camera caught teachers walking out from the St. Joseph Primary School compound at exactly 11:30 a.m. this morning. Even though the principal there was reluctant to speak, a release from the school noted that up to 75% of teachers from that school participated in today's strike action.
And how long will it take for you guys to go back to the classroom?
For as long as the government remains stubborn, we are going to be out here.
GOB says the unions are being unreasonable in requesting that they pass these legislation in a short period of time. And on Friday, inside the House, PM Briceño called on the unions to call off their strike action.
The BNTU right now is calling on the Prime Minister to remove his 10 off the table. We are also calling on the Prime Minister for them to remove that 6 months, that 8 months that they are saying that it will take them to implement these good governance issues. So if we want to call off, let's call off. You want to tell me go back? Then you move back as well and you do what you got to do.
At least 4 teachers at the Edward Pierre High School informed their principal that they would be participating in today's strike action. EP York recently resumed face-to-face learning. At least 1/3 of the students' population were here on campus today. Principal Canto informed News 5 that she does not foresee any staffing issues unless strike action is sustained throughout the rest of the week.
We, though, are open. We're a government school and we will be open. We run classes from 8 o'clock to 1:30, and we currently have only about 170 on campus right now. And the parents have been calling and texting from yesterday asking, and the answer has been the same throughout. Yes, we are open. Yes, we will be having our classes. The reason I'm not worried about the strike action is because of as in impacting our students, it's because one, we are primarily online. And secondly, we teach by departments, and the kids that are on this campus are the kids that we are just giving extra support to.
If the strike action is to run into tomorrow and a few days after now, do you see a long-term sustained strike action affecting your school's operation?
Well, definitely that would concern me. And but like I said, because we are online, we use primarily Google Classroom and Teams. And I would exhort the parents to get into these classrooms with their kids.
The minister responsible for public service, Henry Charles Usher, has already informed Cabinet of his intent to fix the salaries of public officers and teachers to reflect the 10% salary cut. This morning on Open Your Eyes, Usher said government's wage bill has become unsustainable.
The wage bill has ballooned out of control, really, in the last 12 years or so. As a matter of fact, in 2008, when the POP left office, the wage bill was around 275 million. In 2020, adding in wages, the transfers to school, because you know there are some transfers where the school pays the teachers, but we have to transfer the funds. And pension, we're looking at around $650 million. So we see that steep increase in wages. And really, as I said just now, the economy has not been growing. So what you have is that the wages making up more and more and more of all the money that government creates, the revenue that government collects. So now we're at 83%. 83% of every, or 83 cents out of every dollar that government collects goes into paying these wages and so on. It's just not sustainable.
People we interviewed in downtown Belize City today gave varying views on the teachers' position to exercise their right to strike.
I actually voted blue, right? And we had the bill the government was in for 18 years. You never hear that the march and do this and do that and do that, not like that. But now, since blue, like you said now, wanting there to get things back in order, wanting things there to go back in good order, right? Big old thing with that on. They want stop this and stop that. But why didn't they march?
I said the teachers they have to fight for their rights. Okay? Jump high, jump low, the government wants to do, he can't do it. So the kind of teachers, they work hard for whatever they want. Okay? Even in the school, whatever thing they buy, out of their pocket. Government don't give them support for buying things for them.
If they're against the government, 100. I understand this present government just take office a few months and also then fresh. We should give them a little run, but if you ask me to choose between the government and the teachers, I there with the teachers then any day over the government.
Reporting for News 5, I am Paul Lopez.
All right, there you have it. So that was, of course, a recap of the strike with BNTU that was initiated yesterday. You saw the teachers taking the streets, some interesting use of blue and red ribbons. I think it's something symbolic about cutting ties with political parties, or we got the details on that. But the underlying message, I think, there is one of the things they said very early in that story, where the president of the BNTU says that they will continue as long as they feel that they are not being, the government isn't budging on their position.
Yes, and it's going to be interesting to see how the continued strike action plays out over the next few days because, you know, you heard it. They said that the teachers are not going to budge as well. So we'll see what form of protest or strike action continues to carry on over the next few days. And of course, we'll keep you informed both here on Open Your Eyes and on our nightly newscast.
Definitely. And of course, one of the things that's very evident in yesterday's story is looking at how the existence in this pandemic has even changed what a strike looks like. That they are trying to socially distance. You can see all the spaces between them. Of course, yesterday, the Ministry of Health and Wellness reported 25 new cases of COVID-19. That is an accumulation of Saturday and Sunday's total, but definitely moving in the wrong direction there.
Yes, absolutely. We did breathe a little sigh of relief a few weeks ago when we were under 100 active cases, and you know we had reported 0 new cases in a day, which you know after having experienced everything in the pandemic over the past few months, you know the trends were looking great, but now we see that moving in the opposite direction, which is a little bit worrying, especially based on what's happening internationally.
Yeah. You know, in March, we went as low as 20 active cases, and now we're up to 100. And so I think that that's a really important reminder. Since you spoke of what's happening internationally, I mean, all eyes right now are on India, and it is just so heartbreaking to see the stories coming out from there. The death toll is it's the largest that they've recorded so far, as well as new infections.
Yes, absolutely. India, if you've been watching international news last week, you know that India has been recording high record numbers of cases. They've been breaking their own records, unfortunately, each day, with over 300,000 cases being reported daily, deaths totaling more than 3,000 daily again. So, you know, our thoughts are definitely with them internationally. In our own sort of neck of the woods in the Caribbean, things have been on the rise in Trinidad recently. Jamaica as well has been not doing very well for over the past few weeks, actually.
And they have, you know, I know Trinidad and I think Jamaica as well have been put back on that watch list for the U.S. because of increased cases. So, you know, when we start to see our numbers increase here, we realize, or we want to remind you that this is the time where we have to get more stringent. You shouldn't have relaxed at all. We shouldn't have relaxed, but I get it, you know. You start to feel safer. You start to maybe use your sanitizer a bit less. Maybe take off your masks in spaces that you shouldn't. Not keeping the distance that you should. But let's just try to get ourselves back on course here. The vaccinations are still being rolled out. If you qualify, go ahead, but you still must maintain all the other protocols. We cannot afford to be able to go back into another lockdown if the cases go very high, and we know that the tremendous loss of life, families who lose loved ones, when we see the maxing out of the hospital capacity. So let's try to avert ourselves from that nightmare.
Absolutely, and we weren't far off from that, only a few months ago, if we think back to November and December of last year, things were looking very critical for us, and we heard appeals from the Ministry of Health and the medical community to the general public, and the message still remains the same. You know, we do have to take our own responsibility in terms of all that Marlene just said, in terms of our hand washing, keeping our distance, using our sanitizer, and of course wearing your masks when you are out in public.
Yeah, that's right. So with that though, we're going to get moving into our show for today, and that means it's time for some motivation. And our eye-opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. When we grow our food, we participate more fully in nature's cycles and form a closer bond with Mother Earth. Growing a garden of food at home is an experience anyone can enjoy. Even a hanging basket of rosemary or a tomato plant in a pot on the windowsill can enhance your connection with the cycle of life. The edible plants we nurture allow us to literally taste the fruits or vegetables or herbs of our labor, while helping us more consciously participate in the circulating energy of nature. When we grow our food, we participate more fully in nature's cycles. and form a closer bond with Mother Earth. Knowing how to grow your own food allows for a sense of freedom and pride that you can feed and provide for yourself, one of the most basic necessities. Gratitude may fill us as we marvel at the beauty of nature and the majesty of the universe that orchestrates such natural wonders. When we allow our appreciation of life to expand, we harvest so much more than food, and the taste is that much sweeter.
I really like that eye-opener. Do you have a green thumb, Marlene?
No.
Yeah.
I make cactuses die.
Yeah. No, but it's true. I think that one of the things that I was thinking about as we were reading and as I was reflecting on this eye-opener is that I think that since the pandemic and people were home a lot, I saw a lot of home gardening becoming very popular. People were at home and people were trying to be creative, find things to do. Even I did a little bit of that myself.
You did. You never told us.
Yeah, so I grew.
Were you successful?
Yeah, pretty much. I grew some herbs. So I grew some basil, some mint, some rosemary, all of that. So I've tried it in the past and it hasn't really worked out. But I guess since I had a little bit of extra time over the lockdown,
to nurture them.
Yeah. But it's exactly true. You do feel that connection, and it's really. It's a great feeling watching something grow that you've planted and you've reaped, and then you can eventually enjoy the literal fruits of your labor.
Yeah. Good minute for your mojitos.
Exactly. So yeah, it's true. So you do feel that sense of connection, and it's really rewarding. And there's endless benefits to growing your own food, and we can go into all of the health benefits, the economic benefits.
And this is definitely a push. I think there are more people who are interested, and I also think that there's a recognition that being able to participate in whether it's backyard gardening or whether it's your veranda gardening, to be able to sustain your own family with some of the produce that you're able to grow. People do make it look very easy. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure there are lots of hacks online that can make the process simpler for you. I've been unsuccessful, but I also, I have a mother who loves gardening. So if there's anything I need, I can go to her. Maybe that's why I don't try so hard.
Right.
All right, we're going to keep things moving this morning and get into our weather update for today. And today, the general situation is going to be seasonably warm and dry weather prevailing.
And for our 24-hour forecast, we're expecting it to be sunny and warm today with no rainfall. Tonight, skies will be partly cloudy with, again, little to no rainfall.
All right, our winds are going to be moving from the east at 10 to 20 knots, and our sea state is choppy.
And getting into our temperatures, the highs for today, we're expecting 88 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 96 inland, that's hot, and 84 up in the hills. Tonight, we are expecting low temperatures of 78 degrees along the coast, 72 inland, and 66 degrees Fahrenheit up in the hills.
And the extended forecast is for Wednesday and Wednesday night for similar weather conditions to prevail. We want to thank forecaster Catherine Cumberbatch for preparing that for us this morning.
Yep.
And it's time for us to get moving into our show for today.
Yes, and we do have a lot of interesting conversations lined up for you this morning. Our first conversation is going to take place with some teachers, and we're going to be hearing their varying views on both the proposed salary cut and the strike action, which is ongoing by the Belize National Teachers Union. So we're going to be hearing from some different perspectives, and that's going to be the first part of our show.
The second part of our show, we're going to be getting an update from representatives of Rotary and the medical team that's here to participate in the Gift of Life Pediatric Cardiology Clinics. And this was put on pause last year with COVID-19. It has resumed, but there are some guidelines that they want you to take into consideration. So it's definitely something that's going to be very informative.
And our final conversation is going to be with the National Meteorological Service in Belize, and we're going to be talking about some of the weather patterns and what we can expect moving forward, especially as we move into the 2021 hurricane season. And that's going to be our final conversation for this morning. But before we get started and take a short break, we do have some birthday greetings to give. And so from all of us here at Open Your Eyes and Channel 5, we want to wish a very happy birthday to Charlie Perez. And we also want to wish a happy birthday to Andre Muschamp, who is turning 18 today. Ooh. So from all of us here at Open Your Eyes, happy birthday, Charlie and Andre. We hope you have a great day, and we wish you many more. But of course, with that, we are going to be taking our first break, and when we come back, we are going to be getting an update from some of the teachers. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime. While with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, it's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you. There is nothing more important than your health and safety, and we continue to make every effort to make banking safer for you. Our staff is working around the clock to make sure you can do your banking conveniently 24/7 using our mobile banking app and online banking and keeping ATMs up and running. We value your relationship with us and are here to provide the support you need. First responders are also out there 24/7. Thank you, healthcare workers, security forces, firefighters, caregivers. You are all appreciated. Stay safe. We will get through this together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
2020 taught us the importance of being connected to the virtual world, and NextGen is here to keep its commitment to you. Even if you're physically apart, NextGen keeps you digitally connected.
Okay everyone, thank you for following me today.
NextGen provides more than just an internet plan. They provide service plans that support all your online needs. Sign up today and get your NextGen's ultra high-speed internet service. NextGen, powered by Central TV and Internet.
of Belize. This is Tig the artist, Bin the hardest.
And I am Young Protege, aka the Traffic Man, and we are here to talk to you about drinking and driving.
You see me? I could party when I ready, especially with my fans them, but I don't drink and drive. Somebody always sober in my squad to drive.
That's good to hear, birds, because there's no secret that too much Belizeans always they get in a crash because of drinking and driving.
You know, almost 30% of Belizeans reported driving after drinking more than 2 glasses of alcohol, which is considered the legal limit of intoxication.
And what's more, almost 40% reported often riding with a driver who was intoxicated, and over 25% reported driving a motorcycle intoxicated.
This is a serious issue because Belizeans consume an average of 30 liters of alcohol per year, which puts us as the highest consumers of alcohol in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Belize, we need to do better than this now.
Belizeans, let's keep our roads safe for everyone. Never drink and drive because you can't replay in a real life. Stig says so. Respect. My dream.
Reduce your risk of viral illness like the flu or the coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water or with an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing or sneezing with a tissue. Throw away, then wash hands immediately. Avoid close contact with anyone who has the cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or nearest health center and share your travel history. A health and wellness message from your Ministry of Health.
And we're back. And if you're joining us right now, we're just getting into our first conversation for this morning. As we said before the break, we are going to be speaking with some teachers to hear some perspectives as one, the protests have commenced by the Belize National Teachers Union, and the government is still proposing its 10% salary cut to all public officers. And we're going to be hearing from some people who will be directly affected by whatever the government does. And so joining us for this morning's conversation, we have Miguel Bonilla, who is a teacher from Mount Carmel High School, as well as Amilcar Vasquez, who is a teacher from Victorious Nazarene in San Jose Socots. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having us.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We do appreciate you coming in to share your perspective. We can start with a little bit of introductions. Miguel, you've been on our show before, but perhaps you can let us know what your position is today in relation to some of the issues which we've seen, and now that we are well into the BNTU's strike.
Okay, thank you for having me once more. In regards to what you're asking, what is my position? My position has not changed from the last time I was on your show, which is, okay, we are willing and open to negotiations, given certain conditions are met. That is practically the banner for all of us. So, and that is my position. And I think that it is important that people know that we are willing to sacrifice. I mean, I want to start with that. We are willing to sacrifice. We're not being selfish. We also think about the economy. We are willing. However, there are certain things that need to be in place in order to prevent this from happening again to us and to our children. That's practically my position.
And for you, Amilcar?
Yes, I would like to more or less echo what Miguel has said. Before anything, I would just like to state that whatever I share is my personal view and not necessarily those of the union.
Yes.
We have seen the political mischief that has been brewed by some media houses. We know not like that, right? But we just want to put it out there. We have seen what's going on, and I stand by my union 110%. Sometimes there are decisions that are made that do not necessarily reflect our flavor of conviction, but we stand because we know that collectively we have bargaining power beyond that of what I would be able to do on myself, just myself. So my stance is we will strike as long as we need to. We will stand firm, and the government is playing a hardball position. They're out there saying that they have given us compensation, and we know not of any such thing. They haven't come to they haven't been honest with the public or with the teachers. So I would like to say that I stand 110% until it is necessary.
Amilcar, you brought up something which is interesting, and I think that it relates to perhaps what the varying positions might be from within the union itself, because we often hear directly from the leadership, and of course we see teachers or whoever marching in solidarity, but as you said just now, there may be some varying positions. What is it like when you speak with your fellow colleagues and in relation to all that's going on? What is the general feeling, and what are sort of the differences that some people might have?
Yes, I think Mike wants to share something, so I'll just give him the go ahead there.
Okay, my apologies. Certainly, I think that what you're saying is true. There will be variation within every institution. There will never be 100% consensus on anything. And certainly there is variation. But the central message is this, and all the members resonate with this message. We are in this situation because of malpractices in past administrations for the past 40 years. We want to change that, not only for ourselves, but for the benefit of our children and the benefit of that child who is the son of the tour guide who is going to school and thinking that he will make a better future by studying. We want to defend that, and that is a unified position among all the members. It is not something, of course, there will be variations of opinion, but the central message is very, very clear. So that is something that I would like to bring up. I know Amilcar was going to say that.
But Miguel, let me ask you something. You definitely came to the attention of the public when you made the decision to explain the breakdown of the impact of the increment freeze. Now, when you look at what is currently being, what is the message coming out from government, explaining the financial situation, and as you said very clearly, there are varying opinions across even the public service and the unions as to how you should move forward. We've heard people say absolutely no cut, and we've heard others say we want something that we want to have the good governance practices in case, then we'll look at the wage cut. For you, have you worked out a number that you're comfortable with?
I actually have not worked out a number that I am comfortable with. The reason is very simple. I cannot come up with a number of what I am willing. I can give up all my salary, but that will be futile if we don't have the necessary legislation, because what will prevent this government and future government, I'm not accusing this government, so please, that's a disclaimer there. I'm not accusing this government. What will prevent that money that I give up from being squandered. There's nothing much in place to say, okay, these laws will prevent your money. Now, going back to what you're saying, what would be a number that I'm willing to give up? That will depend. That will depend on the government's position also. How far are they going to go with good governance? Am I willing to invest? Because I see this as an investment, and I am willing to invest, but there needs to be something in place that will give me the assurances that yes, this is a good investment. So I don't really have a number.
Yeah.
But certainly that is my message.
Gentlemen, you.
Amilcar.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Amilcar, you want to share in there?
Yeah, I think we're more or less on the same page here. I think there's something that's being misconstrued as to the position of teachers, and that is that we're selfish. We keep hearing this, oh, teachers are selfish. They're just thinking about their money. But let me tell you this, in the current environment, in the current cauldron or hotbed of corruption that is our government system, and I think Miguel made it very clear, it's not one political party or the next, it's the current system of government that we have that's weak. Nobody is willing to give anything. It's 0%. If you ask me about the number that we're comfortable with right now, it's 0%, simply because there's no structure that will assure us that that drop in the bucket won't leak out and be something that will just be invested in corruption. That's what we're seeing. That's what we have seen. I don't want to feign ignorance from one party or the next. They take advantage of the system. But at the end of the day, we the people of Belize have to demand that there is good governance, that there is transparency in all sectors. So until there isn't good governance all around, the number will simply remain 0%.
Now, there are people who do who are following the situation, who are very much upset at the stance that the unions have taken. We've heard the stories countless times. The people within the tourism sector, the tens of thousands of people who've lost their job during COVID, the private sector workers who weren't consulted and have given up some people as much as half of their pay, and they're still working at half pay. These are people who are watching the teachers, the unions, I should say, stand up against a 10% cut, and they said, we gave up last year, it's your turn as well. How do you respond to people like that?
Okay. Let me give a little insight there, Mike. I have a very good example. My mom is a former teacher and my dad is a former tour guide. And I have seen both sides of the, even though they're retired, they still have that love for what they did. And basically, what I can tell you is this, Marlene, that Belizean society needs to stop looking at, oh, I take my lick, so you take your lick too. That is what they're saying, and it's not that we're not considerate of them. What is going on is that they're asking us to give up this 10% because they believe that will help the economy in somewhere. The name, man, make I tell you something, that will not help the economy as it is, Marlene. What's going to happen is that this will continue to fuel cronyism, corruption, the largesse that these government ministers and CEOs are living. That is what is going to fuel. If they would tell me, here what, Amilcar, give you 10%, at that going to some poor family, that's going to some poor tour guide that lost his job, perfect. But that is not going to happen. So Belize, this is not going to happen. You will not see one penny of that money. You will not. And I know that the minister yesterday and in Open Your Eyes said that, well, it's not for that, it's for debt payment. Man, it's not even for debt payment. Believe you me, they have their ways and means to just divert that money, make it leak the bucket into rocky soil, and nothing, absolutely nothing grows in that rocky soil that is our current form of government.
Now, that's one of the part of the conversation that we did have with the minister yesterday. And I hear from both of you this idea of this mistrust that exists in very clearly what you've said before, the systems of government. It doesn't matter what political party is represented. Now, it's only been a few months since this particular administration has been in power. So their point is, well, give us some time to prove that you can trust us. You can't judge them by what has happened over the past decades.
And sorry, just to add to what Marlene said, I think the Attorney General did even say that the government did hear what the unions were saying, and had said that, well, we can implement a lot of this legislation, but in order for us to make sure that there's all the checks and balances on whatever done, it would take probably about 6 to 8 months. So what's your response to that?
Okay, I would like to take that one. That is, I want to give the benefit of the doubt to the government, unlike a lot of people who will claim that this government is corrupt. But here is my pitch. There are signs of corruption. We are not sleeping. There is a lot of research out there being done on corruption. You know, there are symptoms of corruption. 1, nepotism. Number 2, irregular tendering. 3, attacking perceived enemies, which apparently now it is the unions. Unreasonable procurement, refusing reform, and the list goes on and on. Now, those are the symptoms, just the same way that a really bad headache and chills and a fever is a symptom of coronavirus. We have symptoms of corruption. And I'm not accusing this government. Have we seen nepotism? I'm not going to say, okay, we have seen nepotism. Look at the news coverage on the people who got high offices. From the moment that they enter the office of government, they are already showing what they stand for. So they're showing what they stand for. And here's the thing. We saw the first week, we saw political affiliates with a lot of baggage being hired, family members of ministers. That counts as nepotism. I'm not making it up. And that's why our honorable Prime Minister kind of slipped and said that Belize has limited talent. I understand what he meant. I understand what he meant. It was a justification for nepotism, which is a symptom of corruption. And
exactly so.
As long as we have the signs of corruption and the symptoms of corruption, it's 5 months. Obviously, I don't expect them to implement UNCAC, but at least in this month that we have been bargaining, the Whistleblower Act could have come up. The Campaign Financing Act could have come up. Why? Why am I saying this? They claim, okay, there are some corrupt public officers for this and that. But if they don't have the necessary protection for them to say, okay, I'm being bribed, and there is no system in place to prevent all of this. And the system will continue to be abused as long as we just condone it.
What about the sorry, Miguel, what about the other part of the question? I hear you wrapping up there. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's where, you know, there's a practicality to it as well. How well can you put together legislation in such a short time that is going to be effective? If you are asked by, you know, your principal or administrators tomorrow, produce a yearly lesson plans, and you know that in order to put forward quality work, it's not going to be possible, it's kind of the same situation that's being painted by the Attorney General Ministry. How much do you take that part into consideration?
Can I take this one, Migs?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Amel.
Yes, I think that we go back to the same thing, Marlene. I believe that the government is not being honest. I hear the Attorney General, and I would dare not sit down and argue with her. That is her profession. the profession of arguing. But let me tell you something, we are not reinventing the wheel. Back in 2015, we fought for this exact same thing, and for those of us that have selective memory, some of the same teachers that are here today were there fighting for the implementation or the ratification of UNCA. Now they're telling us, okay, well, we're just in and give us some time. No, man, that's the old story. This thing has already been enrolled. Don't tell me that they reset everything when they go into government 5 months in. That is not so. The structures that need be for this legislation is already there. And we know, Marlene, because we are very active within our unions. We're very active within BNTU and how they have been going. So they have more than they say they have. And they're just saying this because they want to drag their feet on something that should have happened 10 years ago.
So your opinion is that it's deliberate. That's how you feel.
Yes, because this has been rolling way beforehand, and you guys have covered it. You know that they don't reset the legislation. And let me tell you this: when governments come in and they really need to make legislation happen, it happens. They just come in one day and the next day they don't change it. It happens. So, they know how to do it. They're just not wanting to do it.
You know, I think you pointed out that there has been strike action by the teachers before, particularly with a good governance mandate. We go back to 2016. It was a historic 11-day protest, and there was actually a point where you had to sacrifice your salaries to be able to proceed with your protests. Do you feel from your colleagues that that same level of commitment is there? The union president said yesterday that it is, but in this time where what your salary is more important than it's ever been, do you think that teachers are going to stick this through even if it comes down to having their pay docked?
Well, personally, I believe they will. There are always those that fall on the road. It's inevitable. You know, this is a war. Some soldiers will fall. But I think the mass of what is teachers of membership of BNTU will continue. There are those that prefer not to be members. They have their right. Those that prefer to stay at school, they also have their right. But the core of those that start will finish. And I think that's another erroneous point of view that the public has sometimes, that teachers are not willing to sacrifice. But we have sacrificed. We know sacrifice, and we will continue to sacrifice if need be. And if the government wants to take the salary away or try to strong arm the managements to take it, because legally speaking they don't have the go ahead to do so, they would have to strong arm management, then they can do that. But we will stand until the position changes, because they want to play hardball, yet say, oh, well, unions give we one chance, we just come in, make we show where we got up, but they are not doing the same with us. That's the problem. They want us to understand them, but they don't want to understand us.
What about the public buy-in? And Miguel, I want to hear this one from you. There's a big difference between 2016 and 2021. We are now looking at children being out of school for an entire year. Parents have additional responsibilities to ensure that whatever work is put together by the teachers is actually done by the children in their homes. On an average day, if you have a strike action, parents have to scramble to figure out what to do with their children during that time. And that usually becomes a part of what feeds into the momentum of the strike. Parents start complaining, they want a resolution, they want to have to stop figuring out what to do with their children. But this time around, that's not going to happen. They have already figured out a solution for over a year. How do you think this will impact the public buy-in?
Okay, well, I think that one of the key things that we need to do as teachers is do what we do best. We need to educate the public, because at the end of the day, yes, sure, it is our salary. And I'll tell you something, I am the son of a taxi driver, I've said this, and a loving housewife. We used to eat tortilla and beans Monday to Sunday. I will survive a salary cut if it is cut. But I'll tell you something, this will have ripple effects on them. The construction worker who generally comes over, he will no longer have a job. The tacos vendor I buy tacos from will also not have a job. Well, she will have a job, but then she will also be receiving the cut if I'm unable to buy all of this. So the first thing is we need to educate the public. It's not about buying, it is standing for what is right. In addition, to answer your question, will the public support this? Because teachers are on strike and they're not sending work. There is a big picture. There is something in pedagogy that we study, and it's called the hidden curriculum. And those are the values that we instill into the young generation. And the value that we are trying to instill in this young generation today, even if the old one is unable to understand it at this point, is that we must fight. We must not be trampled upon by anyone. We need to stand up for our rights, and we need to stand up for our country. And if parents don't need to buy this, it is the reality of the situation. If they support, we will be super happy about it. If not, we will have to do a better job at educating them.
Yeah.
And you know, in a similar vein, speaking about the public buy-in, how do you respond to some people who might be saying that, and that the well, not just teachers, all the unions, that right now the unions are actually being sort of obstructionist, and that they're really holding the government back, because we've seen both in the general elections and the recent municipal elections that it seems that as though the current administration does have a large amount of public support. And there are some who have said that, well, what the unions are doing right now is really holding them back from implementing the plans, especially in the context of the economic sort of devastation that COVID-19 has caused. And that, so to say that, well, the government needs to do what is necessary, but the unions are holding them back. How do you respond to that sort of a criticism?
Okay, so this is a sacrifice. This is certain, yeah, it might seem that we are holding the economy back. That's how it seems. And I am not blind to it. That's how it seems. But the bigger picture is that it is better to pull the Band-Aid right now. It will hurt a little bit right now, rather than having my child. I learned this after having my first child. I don't want him and my future child to be passing the same thing, the same tragedy that we're passing through. So this is certainly a two-way street. It might seem that we are stopping the economy, but this is to obtain the assurances, the legislation that is needed to prevent this from happening in the first place. And this is not supposed to happen again if we are successful. Now, are we holding the economy? Like I said, we are willing to sacrifice with the necessary assurances of good governance. I don't know if Amilcar has something to add.
Yes, I just wanted to add, I also heard the minister say yesterday that Plan Belize is not being rolled out because these things need to be solved first. So to begin with, Plan Belize is not happening. It is not happening. And if you look at the main points that they mentioned that would be happening, it's not happening. The public needs to wake up. Secondly, there is what I call a cancer within our society, and that's political partisanship. I believe that some of those people that say they do not support this belief, that simply because they believe we are assaulting their party. And I would like to say this, and I would like to take educators on a whole here. There's a lot of educators that voted for change this year. If not, there wouldn't have happened. Change would not have happened if educators would not have voted for change. However, we are seeing beyond this political partisanship that is the ill of our Belizean society. And we're saying this, guys, we may have voted for this party or the next, but when it comes to stand for what is correct, for what is good governance, We need to stand now, and we need to stand as a society. Belizeans need to stand with their teachers this time. They need as much trust as they have put in the government. We need that kind of trust to be able to negotiate a future for our children. What they're trying to do is, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to take 10% away, you know, and cut the purchasing power of the teacher, which then cuts the purchasing power of society. Now, you don't need to be you don't need to have a master's degree in economy to be able to see that cutting the purchasing power is not a way to relieve the economy. It's going to go downhill. But they are trying to sell us this idea. You know why? Because this is the low-lying fruit. Because this is what they feel is easier for them.
Let me
but
ask.
They made a mistake. It's not as easy as they think.
Yeah. We're running out of time so quickly, so I want to get this particular question in. You know, there are no easy solutions to this issue. And I think that's one that from the outside looking in, we can see. The economy is in a dire state. The continuous borrowing is unsustainable. And on the other side, we know that the teachers are looking out, one, for each other, those who they know can't afford. And secondly, I don't think anyone ever argues with the idea of implementation of legislation or policies that will ensure good governance. But there has to be a way forward. And this is, of course, not a union representative who I'm asking this to. I'm asking individual teachers. If there's one good faith thing that you could see be done, just one, if in the essence of compromise, that you could see be executed within the next week, or a commitment to be done sooner rather than later, what would that be?
Okay, so that's me. Okay, I think, well, in my personal opinion, I think that, like Amilcar said a while ago, in good faith, enact legislation. I mean, if you want teachers on your side, I want to say two things actually. Enact the legislation quickly enough. Probably you can get it done in a week. You spent 13 years in the wardrobe, per se. Enact legislation, a very simple legislation that is able to pass rather easily, like the Whistleblower Act or the Campaign Financing Act. And you will have much more support when it comes to negotiating and obtaining some sort of compromise from us. And also, the second thing, stop smearing the unions. It does not help. You're just inflaming the situation. If you inflame the situation, people will close their minds. They will not respond positively. So two things: enact legislation that is simple to pass. Commit to uncap for a later term. That's fine. But please stop smearing. I mean, it doesn't bode well for our government.
I do agree. Well, gentlemen, we are out of time, and it was really important for us to be able to expand perspectives. We do talk to union leaders, but we do want to hear from teachers individually as well. So thank you for sharing your perspective, and of course, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having us. Have a blessed day.
You too. All right, with that, we are going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about life-saving checkups and procedures through the Gift of Life program by Rotary. We'll be getting into that in just a few, so stay tuned.
Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Full-Tech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
Currently, we're using Smart Elite VoIP calling plan. We use it interbranch, we use it to call outside, and we also use it to call international. It's far cheaper than what we used to have before. Our equipment are new, PBX box is new. So the PBX is very good because I can call to my Sargassum branch, I can call to my Kikaka branch, I can call to San Pedro branch, and there's no cost using the PBX. Actually right now, since we're in different locations, I can call main office from where I am at a no cost using the PBX system. I would recommend it, sure I would, especially the big enterprises who has a lot of employees. There's a lot of reduction in costs, 50% of saving. Put that on a year, it's a lot of money that we're saving. Money that we could return to our members, since we give back dividend to our members.
Visit our showroom or call 670-6710 to find out how Smart's corporate plan and PBX systems can benefit your business. Consultation is free.
My name is Gerald Jones, a member of the Belize Police Department, and I believe that violence is never acceptable or excusable. We must make an effort to stop it. There is no excuses to violence.
Real men do not abuse women, girls, and children under any circumstances. Men have to set example for boys to renounce any form of violence against women and girls and put a stop to it. Our women are partners in creating a safe space for our children and their children. As men, it is our responsibility to end violence and abuse towards women. Less violence and more love.
Gender-based violence is not just a woman's issue, it is a human rights issue. Women and children should not feel unsafe in their own homes where they should feel the safest. Let us fight against all forms of violence.
I believe that no society can fully develop while marginalizing women. Development can only be successful when it is inclusive and equitable for all. The relationship between women and men must be built on equal power, real partnership, and mutual respect. If people work together, we can bring an end to gender-based violence.
I will play a role in creating a cultural and social shift that no longer tolerates violence against women, girls, boys, and other men. We all have responsibility, so I will challenge my friends, family, neighbors, and my co-workers to end gender-based violence.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Full-Tech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
And we're back. And if you're joining us right now, we are getting our second conversation started. And we are speaking all about the Gift of Life Pediatric cardiology clinics. And here to discuss that, we have Ariel Mitchell, who is the chairman of the Rotary Gift of Life Belize Committee. We also have Jeffrey Delaney, who is a pediatric cardiologist. Leroy Swidlund, who is a Rotarian of the Omaha Rotary downtown, and we also have Yvette Burks, who is a Rotarian and a member of the Rotary Gift of Life Belize Committee. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Morning.
So this is, of course, a really interesting initiative, but perhaps for some of our viewers who don't know, Ariel, why don't you tell us all about what the Gift of Life program is all about?
Well, the Gift of Life program is primarily, it's a flagship of the Rotary Club of Belize. It is primarily targeting children with congenital heart disease. Usually we would have about 2 clinics per year. Unfortunately, last year we only had 1 clinic, and because of the COVID pandemic, the rest had to be postponed. At that time, we had several children who were scheduled to travel abroad for treatment. That was put on hold because of the borders being closed and so on and so forth. So we're so happy now to have the program back online to some extent, because there are a long list of children who are waiting for medical attention.
Now, this has been, how long has this program been running?
Yvette, this program has been going how long?
Well,
Yvette?
we were not Rotarians then, but we understood since 1977.
Wow. And it's a really critical collaboration. I think it's understanding the capacity that we have in country. While you can get some cardiology care, when it comes to pediatric specialization or special needs for children, that's where very often we fall short.
That's
exactly
correct.
So.
Yeah, yeah. Yvette, tell us a bit more about that, being able to have children access care here.
Yeah, so thanks to Dr. Delaney, actually, and the visiting teams, we can do some limited things here when COVID situation allows. However, for the most part, the more complex cases we need to be sending out. And as we already mentioned, COVID, of course, shut us down for at least a year.
Yeah.
But about 3 or 4 months now, a few of our locations abroad started accepting our children again. But unfortunately, they are unable to accept the Belizean children because the cardiac surgeons are not even able to take these patients into cardiac conference to discuss treatment, much less ask the administration for a charity waiver. And so this clinic is extremely important because to be able to get a child the surgery that he or she needs, we need to have a proper screening and evaluation done that's not more than 6 months old. And the video image of the heart echo examination needs to follow exact protocol and be able to be viewed by the cardiac surgeon so that the child can potentially be accepted for treatment. So the value of this of this clinic cannot be underscored. It's critical. I mean, it's a big deal for early to Belizean children.
Dr. Delaney, tell us a bit about children who have these types of cardiac problems. Why do they develop it? Is it something that they're born with? And what's the prognosis if you're able to check in and detect it early?
Right. Thank you for having us on this morning. The answer to the question is actually both. Most of the children are born with the problem, but we also see children with rheumatic disease or secondary infections or problems with the heart that have come up over the course of their life. But most of the children are born with the problem, and then how well they do is quite variable depending on how severe the condition is. You can have children that have something that we follow along to make sure that their status is stable, but they really have no limitations and they can function and perform quite normally. And then we have children that have hearts that are seriously malformed and need to have at least one, if not multiple, heart surgeries to correct or to make what they have as functional as possible so that they can have as good a life as possible even if a cure isn't really a functional outcome for them.
What's the most common cardiac problem we see in children in Belize?
I think there's probably two that come up most often, and that would be small holes in the heart. Small holes in the heart are very common. If you consider all holes in the heart, of just an area where the muscle didn't quite grow all the way together, and there's an opening between the pumping chambers, that's quite common, probably just less than about 1 per 100 births. And then there's also bicuspid aortic valve, or a valve that has 2 leaflets instead of 3. That's quite common, and sometimes doesn't get recognized until later in childhood or early adulthood because the valve functions well for the most part. We have to watch all of those children, and then we have a long list of much more severe diseases that can impact you even as a newborn infant.
Now, Leroy, let's shift focus to this collaboration between the Rotaries and what it's been like to maintain this relationship for as long as you have.
The Rotary Club of downtown Omaha really values the participation and the cooperation of the Rotary Club here in Belize City. Without that, the program wouldn't be successful. But we look forward to coming down at least once a year and having clinics. This year, because of COVID, we actually extended it from 3 days to 5 days. Yeah. But normally it's 3 days. In the past few years, we'll spend another 2 or 3 days where Dr. Delaney actually does some pediatric heart catheterization here in country. So we're always hopeful that we can come back and do that versus having children travel to somewhere like Cayman Islands or Guatemala. Yeah. And to the United States. It's easier, if we can, to do it right here in Belize City.
And Yvette, perhaps you can talk a little bit about planning for this year's clinics after all of the difficulties that were faced last year throughout the pandemic.
Well, that is actually a really interesting project to talk about. It was literally a project. First, I had to convince her, very wonderful friends, especially your esteemed Dr. Delaney, who has a very busy schedule, to consider delaying the clinic instead of, postponing the clinic instead of canceling it. So I had to sweet talk Dr. Delaney, and then I had to sweet talk the rest of his team, and they, of course, graciously said absolutely, and Dr. Delaney was so kind about it, and as soon as COVID allowed, we set a schedule. And then we had to go to the Ministry of Health, and that was very difficult, and rightly so. I respect what the Ministry of Health is doing to try to protect the lesions in this country. And so we had a very, very difficult time with the Ministry of Health in terms of convincing them that we could put together this clinic safely, and a lot of it involved things like the venue. So we are so excited about the collaboration with the Lions Club because we had to find an off-site venue. We could not be at the Carl Huchner. So Lions immediately agreed that it was a very worthy cause, and they were happy to collaborate with us. And by the way, that's working swimmingly well, and we are all extremely pleased about the strength in unity that's happening to bring these clinics together for the children. We also had to find a venue in Dangrida, and Pelican Beach Hotel jumped in immediately, gave us 2 ground floor rooms to do 2 days of clinics down there. We have an appointment system. Patients cannot just show up, they have to call so we can slot them in and avoid having crowds. And of course, we have all the normal protocols. Having put that together, we went back to Ministry of Health and understanding the critical nature of this clinic. This clinic is not about, doing a little dental work or checking bones, which are important, or general wellness checkup. These clinics literally are life and death matter. And sadly, we've lost several children over this past year. And when I say lost, I mean they died. And that breaks our heart because our hands were tied. We could do nothing. And so just literally a week ago, Ministry of Health came back and said, okay, fine, go ahead with the clinic. So we appreciate so much everything that's going into it. Carl Huchner Memorial jumped in, lend us the examination beds and everything we need. So it's an extreme team effort. Every Rotarian has had to pitch in and do what they could to create rooms out of an open space. And as was said earlier, it's going well, but it was quite a bit of organization.
Yeah.
Reaching the patients was difficult because a lot of them changed their prepaid numbers. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to ask a mom or dad, if you know that your child was to be seen within 6 months or a year from a previous clinic, or if within the past 14 months a pediatrician told you that your child has a symptom that is potentially a congenital heart defect, please do not hesitate to call. We're willing to work late, and I speak for Dr. Delaney and his team, to ensure that every child that needs it is seen during this clinic. We cannot help you without the evaluation that Dr. Delaney kindly provides. So please call the number that is going to be shared, 610-3890, and we'll do our utmost to get you in.
Yeah, you do have to work on a schedule due to COVID protocols. I want to get into that in just a few. But Ariel, why don't you share with us kind of the behind-the-scenes mechanics, what it took to get this going and why it was so important for the club?
Well, this like I said, this is our flagship project, and we've been trying to get this project moving for months now. As Yvette was saying just now, the logistics behind it has been very complex, primarily because of the COVID pandemic. And so we've had several postponements, not only with this clinic here, but even with the clinics that we have with the surgeries we have in Cayman, because we have patients in Cayman right now. That has been a logistical problem in itself. But in Belize, the committee, the executive committee of the Gift of Life has been working back and forth. We each have our own responsibility. You know, like Yvette just mentioned, she's the one who has been liaisoning with the doctors in the U.S. We have been here liaisoning with the Lions Club, for example, trying to get a location. We've been getting people setting up appointments, because right now, because of the COVID pandemic, it's all by appointments. And so it has been difficult, but we are so happy right now that it's finally happening. Children parents are ecstatic that finally Dr. Delaney is here to shed some hope for them.
Yeah.
You should see. Pardon?
No, go ahead.
No, you should see the excited faces we have out there of parents and patients. And we have patients that we've been dealing with for a few years now, few months, and we even have new patients right now.
Yeah. Dr. Delaney, tell us about day one. It's been over a year since you've been here.
Right, and so that's exactly what Yvette and Ariel were highlighting, was that some of the children that we had slotted for surgery could not get out for surgery, and then they were denied when travel was released a little bit because their evaluation was too old. Mm-hmm. So we really had to get back down and get those kids rechecked and make sure they were still safe for surgery, or plan how they could be further evaluated. And so that's been really remarkable, and the Rotary and the Lions Club have done a great job of setting up both the space for us to work and the workflow, so that the kids can come in and we can see them and yet still do our due diligence to the COVID protocols and spacing people out and keeping everyone safe. Yeah. It's really been a remarkable team effort. And the kids that we've seen include kids that I've seen for the last 10 years that are doing extremely well. And we saw a number of children yesterday, brand new patients that have been waiting for us to arrive, that have complex heart disease, that will need to get further evaluated as soon as possible. So it's really been remarkable. The first day was an absolute success, and we're looking forward to the next several days to take care of as many kids as possible.
And the children that you saw last year who returned this year, has their situation worsened in that amount of time? Is it still where they can access treatment and improve quality of life?
It's both. Some of the children are stable and are doing fine, and we will work through the process to get them evaluated further. Some of the children have diseases that are severe, and the inability to get them out last year has impacted their health and their ability to get out this year because now they're higher risk. And when you're asking the hospitals around the Caribbean, Central America, and the US to take on patients that are much higher risk, sometimes you get told no. And then we just have to do the best with taking care of them medically and doing the best we can, because we understand the limitations. If we're trying to get a patient placed that could do very poorly, even with access to all the medical care they can provide, then they're likely to get denied. So we have to work with that very hard for all the kids.
Yeah. And Leroy, tell us about coordinating the treatment of the children internationally as well, and also getting the doctors to volunteer. I won't ask Dr. Delaney, I'm sure he'll be too modest about why he does this, but maybe you can tell us a bit, Leroy, about what it takes to get them on board.
It literally, all it takes is asking them.
Yeah.
I've not had any doctor or medical professional that I've asked for help to say, no, we won't help, because they're all committed. I think you heard Dr. Delaney say that he's been coming down here. I believe this is 11 years now. Wow. And prior to that, we had other doctors from Children's Hospital in Omaha, all committed to the program. In addition to the doctors, you have, there's a nurse that's with us, Jenny Strawn. Jenny's been down here, I think, for 20 years with me. And Maura Link is the ultrasound sonographer. They all take personal vacation from their jobs at Children's Hospital to come down and do this. Yeah. And it's not a question if they will come. They call me and say, do I get to go this year? So
wow.
It's easy to get people to say they'll help.
Yeah. And the access to care internationally, who covers the cost for that?
If they come to Omaha, it's our burden, the Rotary and the hospital. The Rotary Club of Belize City does an incredible job of raising funds to send kids, because they'll pay for the travel expense of the child and the parent, and sometimes there's a gift necessary to the hospital that's performing the procedure. So, but the Rotary Club of Belize City has makes an incredible effort to send these kids and get them out, and they raise the funds to do that for the travel.
Yeah, I guess, Ariel, that's your truck raffle and other efforts that you usually have ongoing?
Correct. And of course, I must mention, over the years, the Social Security Board has also been very generous with our efforts. Mm-hmm. They have contributed generously to us, making possible more assistance to these children. But yes, the truck raffle, which we have one coming up now, we encourage everybody to buy a chance to do so, because all of these funds go towards financing, like Leroy just said, travel for the parents and the children to different venues in the U.S. And I must mention also that in the U.S., when these parents go there, they are hosted by Rotarian families who take them into their homes, look after them, sometimes for weeks and months, and then send them back safely to Belize. A lot of these parents have never traveled before, and these host families look after them from the day they get there. After the surgeries, get them to the hospitals for checkups, get them safely back home to Belize. Yeah. So we must send out a kudos to these parents, to these host families in the U.S. and Central America. And right now, presently, the Belizean Association of in Cayman is also doing the same right now. So we should recognize these good folks.
Yeah, very much a collaborative effort.
That's correct.
Before we lose the opportunity, Dr. Delaney, let's talk about some of the signs of cardiac problems in children, just in case parents are at home wondering if maybe they need to get a checkup.
Yeah, so oftentimes some of the things that you'll see in early childhood or when you have a toddler is poor growth, poor weight gain, despite a child that eats well. They just aren't able to put on weight like they're supposed to. That would make you suspicious that they're burning extra calories because their heart may be less efficient. Also a child that doesn't run and play like the other kids, that seems to want to rest a lot or pulls up short or seems to be short of breath. And then if the child is having color changes, where they either get pale or get a bluish hue to their skin when they're running around, then that can be a sign that there's an abnormal mixing of the blood in the heart, and that can be worrisome. Oftentimes there's signs when you take the child to the doctor. They could have a murmur that gives the doctor suspicion that something could be going on. And the doctor obviously can also check the oxygen saturation and other vital signs to see if something seems abnormal. And we get a tremendous number of referrals in from the local pediatricians and family practice doctors that have evaluated the children first and have been suspicious of heart disease and have sent the children on to us. And that's where we get the vast majority of our patients.
Okay. Yeah. And so in this particular clinic, this time around, you're doing follow-ups. Is it also open to new patients?
Both, absolutely. Yeah. We see the kids that we already know, and we absolutely want new children that parents are concerned about or that the doctors have been concerned about to call the number that Miss Yvette and Ariel have mentioned and find a time to come in. We'll obviously see every kid that needs to be seen before we're done this week.
Yeah. So Yvette, let's talk about coordinating those visits. As you said, it's not an open clinic. People can't just show up. Because of COVID protocols, there has to be a new system in place. Give us the details.
Yeah, so we reached out to as many of the known patients as we could. We have communicated with all the pediatricians we could and let them know that the clinic was happening. We didn't advertise ahead because I should mention that on our regular solicited days, we will see over 60 patients in one day. And obviously those patients come with their mom and dad and siblings, and so we're talking about a crowd. We couldn't allow that to happen. So we've been very specific with appointments, but we do have open slots because we anticipate that there will be a few patients that we couldn't reach because of a change of prepaid number or brand new patients who doctor told them that the child might have a problem who didn't know this clinic was coming up. So we are encouraging them, asking them to please call 610-3890 and we will slot them in. If they're willing to come, if they're willing to wait a little bit if it's necessary, because sometimes it runs a little bit late, we will work until we see the last patient. But we can't just have them all show up at the clinic at 8 o'clock and have 60 people waiting outside. So it's important for them to call first.
All right, and you are also going to be in Dangriga.
Yes, so we'll start in Dangriga from 9 o'clock on Thursday morning. We'll be at the Pelican Beach Hotel. Again, kudos to Pelican Beach for giving us the 2 rooms for the evaluation. And we already have appointments set, so it's the exact same thing. It's important for them to call ahead so that we can slot them in at a time when it won't be crowded. But we'll be there on all day Thursday and Friday as long as we need to be. We still have some appointments open Friday morning, but we will definitely see every patient from every corner of this jewel whose parent is willing to come out and take the child through the process of being safely evaluated by Dr. Delaney.
All right. Well, we are just about out of time for this segment, but of course we want to say thanks to all of you for coming in and sharing information all about this really, really great and vital initiative. So to all of you, thank you.
Gavin, may I say something?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. But may I say something? I need to say this. Ariel said, buy a raffle ticket. I have a problem with that. I say, donate $100 to this and all our other fabulous causes. Donate that money because we all know only one person can win that truck. But with your kind donation, it helps us to continue to do this and so many other things for the Belizean public. We'd like to thank all of you Belizeans because everyone who does support our fundraisers directly support one of these children we're serving this week and all the other people in the community we so happily serve. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. That's Channel 5.
All right. And
okay, have a nice day.
And stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break.
And when we come back, we're going to be talking about what we can expect from the weather as we move into the later months of the year. So we'll just take a short break and we'll be right back. So please stay with us.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
We are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us. Then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something. The Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. Stronger together. The Belize Bank. Our country. Your bank.
Hello, Belize. You may not be aware of the new travel requirements set in place by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Passengers traveling to the U.S. must present a negative COVID test or a documentation of having recovered from COVID-19 to travel to the U.S. In light of this, Maya, in partnership with Caring Hands Clinic, have established testing centers in all their municipal airports. Caring Hands Antigen Test Center is operational in San Pedro, Belize City, Dangriga, Placencia, and Hot Springs. These testing facilities are staffed by licensed healthcare professionals, including doctors, registered nurses, and nurse practitioners. Testing is done using Abbott rapid test devices that are FDA approved and made in the USA. The service is safe, fast, affordable, and the close proximity of the centers makes them convenient. Walk-ins are welcomed, but appointments are encouraged. If you would like to make an appointment, please feel free to do so at Make your appointment, get tested, and in 15 minutes, you can get back to your vacation.
Do you need to apply for a Social Security card? With our newest online service, My Social Security, applying for a card just got easier. With a My Social Security account, you can apply for a card anytime and anywhere, putting you in control. To use this service, you must first create your My Social Security account. Visit our website Under Online Services, select My Social Security. Provide your personal information and await activation of your new account. After activation, you are free to log in to your My Social Security account to complete your online application for a Social Security card. Be sure to book your registration appointment to finish the card application process. Gain control and truly experience Social Security at your fingertips.
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
And we're moving into our final conversation for today, where we do a weather update, actually. It's an extended weather forecast. We're talking with Shania Young, who is a senior climatologist at the National Meteorological Service of Belize. Good morning, Shania.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I am fine, thank you.
So this is really an interesting conversation. We've been commenting about the heat, and one of the things we've learned over the years is that you guys at the Met Service remind us that this is the seasonal weather. So we decided to take the opportunity to talk about weather patterns in Belize and also how much they're changing. So let's start with that.
Okay. So as you mentioned, we're in the month of April, which is typically our driest month. And also, we're in the driest part of the dry season, which normally runs between March to May before we transition into the wet season. So typically, it should be warm and in some cases windy, like we experience in early March and parts of the month. As you've mentioned before, the temperatures have started to increase a bit later compared to last year, but there has been some heat days, especially in the inland areas of the country, with, for instance, in Central Farm, I think it was on April 18th, that observed a maximum temperature for the day of 102 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 38.7 degrees Celsius. So it's getting warmer, and we should expect warmer temperatures, especially during the nighttime in the next 3 months.
And have we seen anything out of the ordinary in terms of the general weather situations for, let's say, for 2021 so far?
So far, in terms of temperatures, no. Compared to recent years, we have been observing some late season cold fronts, which has caused an increase in showers, or especially for the month of April. I think it was last Sunday. And later this week, we're expecting another increase due to the some late season cold fronts moving down from the continental US and just passing north of our area. They haven't recently been passing over the country, but just because of their approach and proximity to us, bringing some moisture over the area, we have experienced last Sunday an increase in showers and thunderstorms, and especially over inland areas, and something slightly similar should be expected on Friday this week.
You know, it's interesting when you say that this is typically the hotter time of the year, and you made a note of it's not as warm as last year. I did a quick check to see what the temperature was on this day. We were already in the 90s, and here not so much. I'm talking specifically coastal. So looking at the patterns, usually you're able to predict based on the history of what we see with our weather. How much can we count on historical data at this point in time?
Well, when you don't have, previously in the past, when we didn't really have models and other tools that we currently use to help us track the current weather patterns, we used to rely heavily on historical or climatological data. But we still use those data because the historic data form the basis of any models. For you to model any particular weather condition or pattern, you need to use historical data. So we have been using those historical data, and also because our capabilities in terms of forecasting what the weather and also weather patterns are likely to be ahead, in this case, maybe the next 3 or 6 months, we have been able to have a better idea of more or less what the weather conditions will be like in advance, so that we can provide some type of early warning, whether it's for the excess heat in this case, or the hurricane season, or even our rainfall. We've been able to use both historical and also model data to help us in preparing our both general weather forecasts and also our seasonal outlooks.
And speaking of rainfall, we've seen in past years where, especially around this time of the year, there's been extended periods of no rainfall, and it's caused what we consider, caused droughts. And of course, that has far-reaching consequences to things like agriculture and the environment. So why don't we talk about what the rainfall has been like, what we expect, and whether we can expect any sort of a drought and what that could mean for us.
You're right. You mentioned that previously normally around this time, we don't normally observe a lot of rainfall because the month of April, like I mentioned, is typically our driest month. And just last year, I think almost all of our weather stations across the country during this time recorded no rainfall for the entire month of April, in addition to the excess heat wave days. I think we observed about 29 heat wave days last year for the month of April, especially in the interior and southern regions. For this year, it has been more wetter than normal, but it hasn't surpassed so far what we typically expect in terms of rainfall for this month. Okay. And in the next few months, between the months of May to June, we're expecting rainfall to be near normal or slightly below normal, because we're still transitioning into the transitioning from out of the dry season into the wet season, and this beginning of the wet season is expected to be slightly slower for some areas of the country. So in terms of rainfall, and like you mentioned, these have implications, for instance, on drought. So normally at the Met Office, we monitor both short-term and long-term drought. The short-term drought typically covers a period of 6 months, and as the map is showing currently, at the end of this month, we'll issue this new drought forecast, which is basically going for a drought watch for majority of the country, except for the extreme northern and southern parts of the country. As you've noticed, and I'm sure our friends up north would be able to recognize this, that this dry season for them especially has been a wet one. So that's the reason why we aren't really expecting a drought in the north, but for some areas in the west, and also southern parts of the country have been experiencing occasional dryness. So this is the reason why, and in addition to what the rainfall amounts that are expected for the month of May, June, and July, there is a drought watch that will be in effect. What does a drought watch mean? It basically means that a drought is possible. So over the next few months up until the end of July, there is a possibility that a drought can develop in these regions. And in this case, we normally advise all our stakeholders, whether it's agriculture, water users, to just continue to monitor their water resources and to put in plans beforehand in the event that a drought does develop, what they can do. So normally, when there is a drought watch issued, the users or water users in general are advised to protect whatever water resources they have, to implement their drought monitoring plans, and also to repair any infrastructure that they might have, so that when they do receive rainfall, they can store this rainfall and utilize the rainfall that they do observe optimally. In some cases where rainfall wouldn't be adequate, for instance in agriculture, then we normally would advise them to implement irrigation if they are able to, or to practice other moisture conserving methods such as mulching, to retain as much soil moisture as they possibly can with the given water resources that they might have during the period.
That's interesting. When was the last drought? Was last year or the year before?
It was last year.
It was last
year. Well, the year before, going into the early parts of last year.
Yeah, it was a terrible drought. I mean, I think I remember the farmers speaking out the environmental hazards that came from it as well. But this year, it's not looking like it'll follow that pattern. At least what we see now.
It shouldn't be as severe, because I think last year and even the year before around this time, we had already begun experiencing below normal rainfall.
Yeah.
So like I said, this dry season has not been a typical dry season, especially for the northern parts of the country. So while last year around this time there were concerns, and if I recall correctly, we did issue in conjunction with the Ministry of Agriculture that there would possibly be a drought that would have developed at the end of the dry season. But I don't know if you would say, fortunately, at the end of May and also the beginning parts of June last year, we had some excess rainfall events that kind of switched or reversed the pattern of us developing a more severe drought into neutralizing the conditions. And then later on in the season, in the months of October and November, when we experienced the effects from Iota and Eta, this led to an excess in rainfall.
You know, and that's the other point I wanted to go on. Going from extreme dry and talk about drought to the extreme flooding that we've seen. You know, there's always this talk in planning, you know, something may happen once in every 100 years. Well, let's take a look at that. We're in a pandemic, which people usually say happens once every 100 years. And we saw flooding levels last year, which is also the highest as to what people would call those once in 100 years flood. So what does that say about what's currently happening environmentally?
Okay, like you said, we normally experience or would expect to experience those type of conditions on a smaller scale, or less likely 1 in 100 years. So, but like with anything, that's what we call climate variability. With all the changes that are occurring, you would have from time to time experience climatic stressors such as those extremes. So moving from one extreme to the next are mostly driven by the general circulation pattern. For instance, moving from El Nino, which is normally attributed to drier conditions, into more neutral or La Nina event, which in the case of last year during the month of November, a very strong La Nina event had developed, And this typically is normally associated with weather conditions, hence the reason why we had a very active hurricane season last year. And also in the month of November, we experienced the development, I think, of at least two.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, it was Eta and Iota that developed in the month of November alone. But this was attributed to the fact that a very strong La Nina event had developed in the Pacific Ocean, which increased or heightened the tropical cyclone activity in our region last year.
So last year we saw, I'm trying to remember the exact number, but we went beyond the initial list of named storms. And this year, the prediction is about the same.
I think last year we had about 30 named storms.
Yeah.
And this year they're predicting 17, I think. So it's still, compared to the long-term average of storms, it's still not going for an above average season, but it isn't currently at the moment expected to be as severe as last year. But there is, again, the possibility of major hurricanes developing. And as we always tell anyone, especially our Belizean public, that it only takes one storm. So we tend to not try to focus on the number of storms that are forecasted, because we all know that it just takes one, even if one storm is forecasted to cause a lot of destruction, especially in our region and in Belize. So compared to last year, where there was actually 30 named storms, this year it's 17, but compared to the climatological norm, it is an above average season.
Oh, absolutely. And my connection there is that last year, the early predictions were, I think, 15 to 20 or something like that. But then we saw 30. So looking forward, though, I know part of the conversation taking place among scientists is whether or not we should actually initiate the hurricane season earlier to mid-May, because we've seen quite a few storms start before the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think the NHC has actually indicated that they will start the issuing, or if there's a system developed in the month of May, for instance, the pre-warning, but they have not made a decision up until this time to change the start of the hurricane season from June until November, because with anything, especially when we're doing predictions that affect life, you need to let it be driven by data. So while there has been, especially recently, the development of storms outside of the season, which is normal, which can happen, because I think in one case we had a storm develop in January or February, but they just took the decision to, if a system developed, to be prepared to issue or start issuing warnings and alerts to persons before the actual hurricane season. So it's not something that they will do on a regular basis, and they haven't decided to change the start of the season officially as yet. But as we've noticed, there are changes that have been occurring, and it's something that is supposed to be monitored. And if it warrants for a shift in what we know now as the typical hurricane season, then that is something that is already being considered, but has not occurred up until this time.
And you mentioned, you touched on this very, very briefly in this context, but as a general trend based on what you're observing, we often talk about how Belize is one of the countries that is one of those it's going to be dealing with dealing with the brunt of some of the effects of climate change. And we, of course, saw last year with flooding, and we've seen with droughts and all. So can you talk about sort of what general patterns we've been noticing over the years and what that could mean for Belize in the future?
So as you mentioned, we have been experiencing more dramatic shifts in the weather, and we have been experiencing an increase in extreme weather events such as droughts, heat waves, and also excessive rainfall, flooding. And with the expected projections or climate change projections currently, there is going to be an increase in extreme events and also an increase in the intensity of the tropical cyclones that would likely develop in the future. And in the case of Belize also, we are one of the countries that are prone and already has been experiencing sea level rise. So again, that is another concern for us going into the future. We can't change what is expected, but we can try our best to mitigate and be prepared for when these changes do develop. They have already started to occur now, but in the future, they're expected to be more frequent, especially heat waves and even marine heat waves and the continued increase in sea level. These are conditions that are expected to affect our region in general, but also Belize.
Mm-hmm. What do you find yourself most intrigued by when you look at the current data and the changes that are taking place?
Well, for me personally, because I am somebody who likes to work with data and focus on the trends, it is quite alarming the rate at which these trends, especially in some areas of the country. For others, it might be slower, but we have been increasing, especially when especially when it comes to an increase in temperature, both locally and also globally, that there is a continued trend of rising temperatures globally. And this is one of the reasons why the future climate change predictions are hinting at more extreme events, because we haven't been able to keep or maintain the global temperatures. And something that I think maybe it was 2 years ago that I found particularly alarming, because I am involved, like I mentioned before, with the science behind climate change, is the fact that we have already observed a 1.2 degrees warming. And in the case of Belize, where we have our coral reef system, that temperature warming or increase of 1.2 has already begun showing some serious effects. So if we aren't able to maintain the 1.5 that is being championed, and even at 1.2, we have already started to observe changes. This is something that is very alarming for us, like for our region, and especially for Belize, because of our coral reefs and our other ecosystems that are very vulnerable to the effects of climate change. We cannot afford continued warming, and also we cannot afford to reach to the global warming of 2.2 degrees Celsius, because even at 1.2, we have already begun observing some serious changes. So imagine what it will be like if we get to 1.5 or even 2 degrees Celsius.
Wow. And some of the other anomalies that have popped up on our radar in just the past, I'd say, decade, we now have sargassum warnings, which we haven't been reporting on as much, but it's actually one of those years where you're seeing a lot of mats coming in.
Yes, I think it was probably in 2011 that they started really monitoring and tracking the maps as they move across the region. But I think it was 2018 where we saw an excess, and where the entire conversation started to increase or shift towards sargassum, what is causing it, what effects it has been having in our region and it also Belize. And for the earlier months of this year, we haven't really observed a lot of mats, but typically around this time of year, May, when the sea surface temperatures begin to gradually warm, leading up to the hurricane season, we do normally observe an increase in sargassum mats. So this is why I think maybe the last month and this month, we have observed an increase in mats coming onto the shore, because the sea surface temperatures are getting warming, which is one of the ingredients that normally stimulate or allow algal bloom, and hence the reason why we have begun observing an increased number of sargassum mats along the coast of Belize, but particularly over northern and central regions.
All right. Well, Shayna, thank you so much for coming up and giving us all these updates. The impacts, of course, of the weather and of climate change on us are extremely important. So we want to thank you for coming in and sharing a little bit of what we can expect for the rest of the year moving forward.
You're welcome.
One final question. Is it going to get hotter? Is this the hottest it'll get, or we'll see higher temperatures very soon?
It is going to get hotter because we are going into what the region calls as a heat season. For most of the Caribbean region, it is normally between the months of May to October. But in the case of Belize and also Cuba and some countries in the western parts of the Caribbean, our heat season actually starts a little earlier in the month of April. And normally May is our hottest month in terms of temperatures. So we haven't begun the month of May, so continue to expect an increase in heat. And also for the season between May to June, there is expected to be at least 14 heat days. Normally for that period, we would observe between 7 to 14 heat wave days. But this season, they're forecasting above average heat wave days between about 14 days. But again, compared to last year, it isn't expected to be as dramatic. I think last year, the station that we have in Melinda observed 112 heat wave days. So this year, we aren't expecting as much, but it is going to be, as daytime and nighttime temperatures are going to be above normal for the next 3 and even possibly the next 6 months. So there is a very high chance of heat stress on humans and also on livestock and other agricultural crops going into the next 3 months.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's important for us to know. We must be prepared for that heat. Shania, we appreciate you. Please stay safe as you continue your great work.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and take our final break, and we'll be back in a few. Stay tuned.
Hola, Tony.
Hey, Kevin, ¿qué onda? ¿Qué pasa?
Nada, le vine a buscar porque necesito comprar más mercancías de vasos y platos desechables para mi tienda de comestible. Me estoy quedando sin esas cosas.
No, hombre, fíjate que desde el 15 de abril no puedo importar nada de eso. Y se me acaba de terminar todo lo que tenía hace como 3 semanas.
Oye, pero nunca has estado sin esas cosas. ¿Qué está pasando?
Mira esto. Esa es la nueva ley que prohíbe todo el uso de plásticos no reutilizables. Esos son vasos, platos, cucharas, tenedores, todo eso. Desde 15 de abril de este año no he podido importar nada de eso. A partir del 15 de enero del 2021 nadie puede fabricarlo. 15 de abril 2021 nadie lo puede vender. Y a partir del 14 de julio del 2021 si alguien te agarra con eso, te multan.
Híjole, no sabía eso. Necesito cambiar algunas cosas. Les diré a mis clientes por qué esas cosas ya no están disponibles. Gracias, Antonio.
Así es, cuídate.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something. The Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
It's a fact that with Smart, you get truly unlimited everything. Only with Smart, you get unlimited data anytime. While with the other guy, it's only double data on weekends. With unlimited data every day with Smart, there's no need to wait. So, It's a fact that our unlimited plans beat the competition. Stop being measured and told when to use your data and get unlimited talk, text, and data. Experience the true unlimited plans with Smart. That's a fact. Make the switch and live smart.
And if we're joining us right now, we're just getting our show wrapped up after a bunch of conversations this morning. We want to say thank you to all our guests for bringing their respective updates. Of course, our first topic, we were speaking with some teachers about the ongoing strike action by the Belize National Teachers Union. We were getting some perspectives from some teachers, so some individual teachers, and so it was very interesting to hear that, especially as we saw yesterday's events unfold. And we will, of course, continue to bring you coverage of the events of all the unions and not just the BNTU as activity continues over the next week, and we'll see what that has in store.
All right, and we also want to thank the representatives who are hosting the Gift of Life program. Do keep in mind that they are seeing children who do have cardiac problems, heart problems. If you have previously been a participant of the clinic and you're due a checkup, please call them and get in touch so you can schedule an appointment. And if you need to be referred to it as well, you can also call them. You can't just show up because it's not an open clinic, and that's just naturally because of the COVID protocols in place. They will be in Dangriga in the latter part of this week, so if you're in that area, please ensure that you take advantage of this opportunity.
Absolutely. And finally, we were speaking with senior climatologist Shana Young from the Belize National Meteorological Service, talking about some of the weather patterns that we have observed so far and a little bit of what we can expect for the rest of the year. So we want to thank her for coming in and sharing that update with us. Of course, as we discussed in the program, climate change does affect us significantly, so we do appreciate the chance to speak with the Met Service on a little bit of what we can expect.
And I think the one thing I'll walk away with is that the days are going to get hotter
yeah.
within the next month or so. So if you've been complaining about the heat, this is kind of your gradual warm-up to the hotter days that are to come. We do want to remind you, of course, that the hurricane season is upon us as well. It's a great time to start your plans now. Put aside what you can just in the event that we face the threat of a storm. That's all the time we have for today, though. If you want to get in touch with us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com.
You can also find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OIE Belize.
And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
Start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your heart open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.